You're on the couch, scrolling through your phone. You haven't said a word to your dog in 10 minutes. You glance up, and he's already looking at you. Not at the door, not at the TV, at you. The second your eyes meet his tail gives one slow thump against the floor. Then he looks away, almost as if he wasn't watching at all. You go back to your phone. A minute later, you check again. He's watching again. Most owners would probably call this boredom. Maybe he wants a treat. Maybe he wants attention. But if that's the whole explanation, why does he do it after he's eaten? After a walk? When nothing obvious is happening? There may be something much more interesting behind that quiet stare, because researchers have found that dogs can pay close attention to whether a person is looking at them, and that information can influence what they do next. And once you understand that, the way you interpret your dog's stare starts to change. Psychologist Juliane Kaminski and her colleagues at the University of Portsmouth studied this question in a very different situation. Dogs were presented with food they had been taught not to take, but the researchers changed something about the person in the room. Sometimes the person's eyes were open, sometimes they were closed. Sometimes the person was facing the dog, and sometimes the person had their back turned. The result was striking. The dogs were more likely to take the forbidden food when the person appeared less able to see what they were doing. In other words, the dogs weren't simply responding to the presence of food. Their behavior changed depending on information about the person's visual access to that food. That doesn't prove that a dog thinks about your mind in exactly the way a human does. But it does tell us something important. Your dog can use your body position, your gaze, and other visual cues to work out what you may or may not be able to see. And that makes your dog's quiet watching a little more interesting. When he looks at you from across the room, he may not simply be waiting for a treat. He may be monitoring what you're doing. Are you looking at him? Are you looking somewhere else? Are you getting up? Are you reaching for something? Your dog has learned that your attention contains information. And there's another fascinating piece of evidence. Juliane Kaminski and her colleagues also studied dogs' facial expressions when humans were present. They found that dogs produced more facial movements, including the familiar raised eyebrow expression, often described as puppy dog eyes, when a person was actually paying attention to them. Importantly, the study did not show that dogs consciously invented a particular expression to manipulate humans. What it showed was that the presence of a human audience influenced the dog's facial behavior. That's a subtle distinction, but it's an important one, because it suggests that at least some of the expressions we find so emotionally powerful aren't completely independent of the social situation. Your dog isn't just making a face. He's responding to the fact that someone is there, someone is watching, someone who matters. And that brings us to the part that may explain why those moments can feel so strangely personal. In 2015, researcher Miho Nagasawa and colleagues at Azabu University studied the relationship between dog-owner eye contact and oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone involved in social bonding and other physiological processes. The researchers found that dogs and their owners who engaged in longer mutual gazing showed increases in urinary oxytocin after the interaction. The researchers also tested hand-reared wolves. The same pattern was not observed in the wolves. The authors interpreted these findings as evidence that prolonged mutual gaze may be part of a bonding mechanism that developed during the domestication of dogs. But there's an important scientific caution here. The study does not mean that every time your dog looks at you, oxytocin automatically surges through his body. And it doesn't prove that your dog is consciously thinking, "I love this person, so I'll stare at them." What it tells us is more interesting precisely because it's more specific. Social interaction between dogs and humans can have measurable physiological effects, and eye contact appears to be part of that relationship. So now go back to that first moment. You're on the couch. Your dog is across the room. You look up. He's already watching you. Maybe he's waiting for you to stand up. Maybe he's checking what you're doing. Maybe he's simply responding to a familiar social partner whose movements have become important to him. We can't look inside his head and know exactly which thought is there, but we do know that dogs are remarkably sensitive to human attention. They watch our faces. They follow our gaze. They respond to where our bodies are directed. And over thousands of years of living alongside us, they've become unusually good at reading the human beings around them. So that stare across the room may be much less random than it looks. Your dog isn't necessarily asking for something. He may simply be keeping track of the most important source of information in the room, you. And maybe that's why the moment feels different when you finally look back. For a few seconds, neither of you is doing anything. You're just looking at each other. But to your dog, that quiet moment is still social information. You're there. He's there. And for an animal that has learned to build its world around human attention, that may be enough to make the moment matter. So the next time you catch your dog watching you from across the room, don't assume he's doing nothing. Look back. You may be witnessing one of the simplest and most fascinating ways dogs stay connected to us.